There's a moment in London where 40,000 tons of stone, marble, and history stand perfectly still on land that should never have supported anything at all. Not a palace, not even a house, because beneath one of the most powerful symbols on Earth is not rock, not bedrock, but something far more dangerous: soft, shifting, waterlogged earth that swallows weight and drags structures down into silence. And yet somehow, this didn't collapse, it didn't crack, it didn't fail. It evolved, layer by layer, mistake by mistake, into something stronger than anyone originally planned. But here's the truth they don't tell you: this palace was never supposed to survive, and what it took to keep it standing would push engineering, ambition, and human endurance to the absolute edge.
I am now standing right in front of this palace, and if you could see beneath the ground, you might not want to stand here at all.
Cold morning air drifts across the massive facade, but the real story begins far below it, in a time when this entire land was nothing but wet, unstable ground. No symmetry, no grandeur, just mud, thick, heavy, and alive. Every step sank slightly. Every movement pulled against resistance. This wasn't a construction site, it was a trap. Before a single wall could rise, the ground itself had to be defeated.
Imagine, you are building on a place where the ground itself is resisting you. This wasn't just construction, it was a confrontation.
Workers began digging, and the deeper they went, the worse it became. Water seeped in from every direction. The soil refused to hold shape. Trenches collapsed. Progress erased itself overnight. This wasn't just slow, it was unstable, unpredictable, dangerous. So the strategy changed. Instead of fighting the mud at the surface, they went deeper, much deeper, searching for something solid, something trustworthy. And when they found it, a dense layer of clay hidden beneath the chaos, it changed everything. But reaching it came at a cost. Entire sections had to be widened. Foundations spread outward instead of downward, distributing weight like a snowshoe across fragile ground. It was simple in theory, brutal in execution. Every inch gained felt temporary. Every solution felt like a gamble. And then came the most unexpected decision of all. They didn't anchor the house to the ground. They made it float.
It sounds strange, but yes, they supported the entire structure on a kind of raft, a wooden foundation resting on the soil, distributing the weight evenly.
Massive timber beams were laid across the unstable earth, forming a floating platform, a wooden grid strong enough to carry the weight of everything that would come next. It wasn't permanent, it wasn't perfect, but it worked, for now. Above it, the first stone was placed. Quiet moment. No celebration. Just a beginning that no one was sure would last. Then the pace changed. The site transformed into something else entirely, a machine. Clay from the ground was dug, shaped, fired, and turned into bricks right there on location. Fires burned endlessly. Day turned into night, and night into day, but the flames never stopped. Thousands, then millions of bricks emerged from the earth itself. But they weren't perfect. Each one had to be inspected, tested, sorted. The strongest carried the load. The weakest were hidden away in places where failure wouldn't be fatal. This wasn't mass production. It was controlled survival.
Every brick was a decision. Place it wrong and the entire wall could be compromised.
The walls began to rise, slowly at first, then with rhythm, layer after layer. Brick, mortar, pressure, alignment. The structure climbed upward, almost cautiously, as if testing whether the ground would accept it. Above them, scaffolders worked one level ahead, always higher, always exposed. No harness, no safety nets, just wood planks, and gravity waiting below. One mistake, and the fall wouldn't forgive. Inside the rising shell, another world was taking shape. Massive oak beams arrived, cut by hand, shaped by instinct, and fitted together with a precision that didn't rely on metal, but on mastery. No screws, no nails, just interlocking joints designed to tighten under weight.
This wasn't just construction, it was the peak of craftsmanship. Today we use machines. Back then, people themselves were the machines.
Floors were laid, then walls again, then floors again. A cycle that slowly turned empty space into structure. And then, something subtle changed. Openings appeared, not mistakes, not gaps, but intentional voids. Spaces left for windows that would one day frame the city. The building was no longer just rising, it was beginning to see. And then came the most dangerous phase yet, the roof. But it wasn't built above, it was built on the ground. A massive skeletal structure of timber triangles, each identical, each calculated for strength. Piece by piece, it took shape below, before being lifted into position high above the walls. The lift had no margin for error. Ropes strained, wood creaked. The entire structure swayed slightly in the air, unstable, heavy, unforgiving.
If it had collapsed, it wouldn't have just been the structure. Months of work would have been gone in a second.
But it held. One by one, the trusses locked into place, forming a rigid spine across the building, and over it, slate tiles were laid, heavy, weather-resistant, designed to fight against London's relentless rain. Finally, half of the shell was complete. A house stood where mud once ruled. Strong, symmetrical, impressive, but not enough. Because what stood here was never meant to stay a house. It was about to be consumed, transformed, expanded into something far beyond its original purpose. And the man who would make that happen wasn't known for caution. He was known for spectacle.
And from here, the story starts to get dangerous.
The air changes when ambition enters the story. What was once a carefully balanced structure suddenly becomes a canvas for something far more dangerous, vision without restraint. Because the man now looking at this house didn't see limits, he saw opportunity.
I'm now standing at the very spot where the transformation begins. And believe me, this wasn't an upgrade, it was a takeover.
The order was simple, but its implications were massive. Don't improve the house, don't extend it carefully, consume it, wrap it, expand it, turn it into something that dominates everything around it. Not a residence, but a statement. And to execute that vision, an architect was chosen who didn't think like an engineer. He thought like a showman. Construction didn't restart, it accelerated. Sections of the original structure were stripped away with surgical precision, not destroyed entirely, but carved back to make space for something larger, heavier, more theatrical. The foundations were pushed further, deeper, wider, as if the building was trying to grow muscles to support what was coming next. And then, the material changed. The deep red of brick began to disappear behind something warmer, richer, almost glowing. Stone cut from distant quarries arrived rough and unfinished, but what happened next turned construction into something else entirely. It became sculpture.
This isn't just a building going up, it's being carved. Every block is being shaped by hand.
Masons stood over raw stone blocks, chisels striking rhythmically, shaving away imperfections, revealing precision hidden inside rough mass. Each piece was shaped before it was ever lifted, because once it went up, there was no correction. Above them, scaffolding spread outward, not just around the building, but into the air like a temporary city. A wooden skeleton supporting the creation of something permanent. Every level added pressure, every column added risk, and the lifts became heavier. Much heavier. Massive stone sections were hoisted upward, swaying slightly, testing ropes, testing balance, testing nerve. One slip, one miscalculation, and the collapse wouldn't just damage the structure, it would kill the momentum of the entire vision. But speed was everything, and that's where the cracks began, long before anyone could see them.
A dangerous decision was made here. Speed was chosen over quality.
Timber that wasn't fully dried, mortar that hadn't fully set, components rushed into place to maintain pace. On the surface, it looked like genius. The palace was rising faster than anything before it. Walls stretched outward, facades expanded, grand spaces formed where empty air once existed. But underneath, the materials were still moving, still shrinking, still settling. The palace looked complete, but it wasn't stable. Inside, vast rooms opened up like caverns, spaces designed not for living, but for impact. High ceilings, endless spans, floors stretching wider than traditional structures could handle. To support them, beams of enormous size were installed, cut, shaped, and forced into place with precision that allowed no error.
I'm standing inside this hall, and imagine this, there was a time when all of this was unstable. This entire space could have collapsed.
And at the center of it all, a statement piece, unlike anything before. A staircase carved from a single block of marble, not assembled, not joined, one continuous mass, extracted from a mountain, transported across water, and installed as if it had always belonged here. It didn't just connect floors, it announced power, control, wealth without limit. For a moment, it worked. The palace stood complete, a masterpiece, fast, grand, unmatched. And then it started failing, quietly at first. Wood began to shrink. Joints loosened. Water found its way through imperfections so small they were invisible during construction. Ceilings warped. Surfaces cracked. The same speed that built the palace was now tearing it apart from within.
Everything looked perfect, but in reality, the system was failing.
The reaction was immediate, brutal. The man who imagined it all was removed. His vision blamed for flaws that were already embedded deep inside the structure, but tearing it down wasn't an option. So they did something more extreme. They covered it. A massive layer of protective material was added. Heavy, expensive, unapologetically practical. Not to enhance beauty, but to stop failure. To seal the palace like a wound. It worked, but at a cost. Money drained, progress slowed, and then everything stopped. For years, the palace stood incomplete, silent, empty. A giant shell of ambition waiting for purpose. Until suddenly, everything changed again.
And this is where a new phase begins, where the building doesn't just survive, It evolves.
A new resident arrived, not to showcase the palace, but to live in it. And that changed the problem completely. Because now, this wasn't just architecture, it had to function. Fast. Rooms that were once hollow began to fill. Walls were finished, interiors transformed, but the deeper issues surfaced immediately. There was no proper water system. Upper floors remained dry. Daily life couldn't operate at this scale, so they did something radical. They built a reservoir above the building, a hidden lake, sitting high above the structure, using gravity itself to push water through the palace. It was simple, dangerous, effective.
Imagine you are inside a palace, and right above your head, there is an artificial lake.
At the same time, a new technology entered the space, light that didn't rely on flame. Gas spread through pipes across rooms, eliminating darkness, but introducing a new threat: invisible, flammable, lethal if mishandled. The palace was no longer just heavy, it was alive. Systems moving, pressure building, energy flowing through walls that were never originally designed for this level of complexity. And still, it wasn't enough, because the biggest flaw remained. It wasn't built for a family, it was built for display. So once again, the solution wasn't adjustment, it was expansion.
And here, the game changes completely.
A new wing was planned, not as an addition, but as a redefinition. A structure that would close the open form of the palace and create a new face. A front that wouldn't just exist, but communicate. And this time, a new force entered the equation: steam. Machines replaced muscle, lifting power multiplied, speed increased beyond anything the original builders could imagine. Massive stone blocks rose faster, higher, and more precisely. The rhythm of construction changed from human limitation to mechanical dominance. The new facade climbed rapidly, a wall of pale stone rising like a cliff, reshaping the identity of the entire structure. And at its center, a single feature that would define everything: the balcony.
This isn't just architecture, it's a connection. From here, the monarchy communicates directly with the public.
But even as the final structure took shape, one last impossible task remained. Something already built had to be moved, not destroyed, not replaced. Moved, thousands of tons of stone, carefully dismantled piece by piece, transported across the city, and rebuilt somewhere else. A perfect reversal of construction, a building unbuilt and reborn. And with that obstacle gone, the space in front of the palace opened for the first time, wide, empty, controlled. A stage, because that's what this had always been, building toward, not just a structure, a performance. The final layers were applied, surfaces refined, gates forged, iron shaped into intricate patterns, then coated in gold, massive yet precise, decorative yet defensive.
This is the final statement, a perfect balance of beauty and security.
Then, silence. After decades of noise, motion, pressure, and transformation, everything stopped. The scaffolding came down, the barriers disappeared, and slowly, the full scale of it became visible. A palace that should never have stood, now complete. But the final test wasn't structural, it wasn't architectural, it was human. People gathered, watched, judged, accepted. Because in that moment, the building stopped being a project and became a symbol.
I'm standing here, and this doesn't feel like just a building, it feels like a message.
A message of control over nature, over failure, over time itself. A structure built on weakness that refused to collapse and instead became immortal.